They thought she was just another quiet black girl. They didn't know she could break a grown man in 3 moves, so when 5 boys cornered her and her sister behind the school, only one question remained. Who was really in danger? Stay until the end. You won't forget this. Sisters Lena and they said it was just another school, another move, another state, another fresh start. But no one tells you that sometimes the most dangerous halls are the ones lined with trophies, that the sharpest violence doesn't come from fists, but from silence, from eyes that dismiss, from systems that smile while they erase you. Lena Griffin didn't scream the first time she felt it, neither did her sister Layla. There was no outburst, no tears, just that tightening in the chest, the kind that makes you feel like you're holding your breath in a place that demands you disappear. And then it began. A note, a laugh, a shove. And suddenly, 2 sisters found themselves not just new students, but targets. Only no one knew what they were really capable of. That's the part that still gives people chills, because the students of Pinehurst Prep weren't prepared for what would happen next. They had no idea that beneath the quiet, beneath the braids and the notebooks and the silence, stood 2 girls who had been forged in sweat shadow and skill trained not just to defend but to endure, not just to survive but to dismantle. And when they finally struck back, it wouldn't just change their school, it would change everything. If you want to see how this story unfolds, how silence became storm, how the hunted became the reckoning, make sure to subscribe. It's the best way to support the channel so we can keep bringing powerful stories like this to light. One click could change how you see the world. Now, back to where it all began. They arrived in Austin just before the fall semester. The air was thick with heat and fresh start anxiety. The movers had barely unpacked the boxes when their mother, Renee Griffin, a cybersecurity analyst with eyes like steel, sat the girls down at the dining room table. New school, new city. Same values, she said. You know how this goes? Lena nodded. Layla tapped her nails against the wood. They did know. This was move number 4 in 6 years. Each time their parents climbed the tech ladder, the girls were uprooted, replanted, asked to adapt. But Pinehurst Prep wasn't just another school. It was a fortress, brick and ivy, prestige and power. Its students drove Teslas at 15. Their last names matched the names of buildings. There were rules there, but none of them were spoken aloud, and none of them were built for girls like Lena and Layla. On the morning of their first day, the twins walked through the gate like shadows, slipping through sunlight. Same uniforms, same shoes. But everything about them stood out. The richness of their skin, the curl of Layla's natural hair, the stillness in Lena's expression. The receptionist didn't smile. Their homeroom teacher didn't greet them. And when they walked into their first class, the conversation stopped like someone had slammed a piano lid shut. It didn't take long to learn the hierarchy. The quarterback ruled the courtyard. The cheerleaders had their own staircase. And if you weren't white rich and loud, you were expected to know your place. Lena sat near the back of each classroom, drawing in the margins of her notebook. She watched everything. Layla was sharper, more impulsive. She cracked jokes under her breath. She called things what they were. But for 2 weeks, they both followed the same rule blend except that was impossible here. At lunch, no one sat beside them. At gym, they were always paired together as if the other students were afraid to touch them. Connor Briggs noticed early. He was the kind of boy who had never been told no. Blonde, cleft chin, born from money and entitlement. He led with charm when it suited him, but could cut with cruelty when it didn't. His sidekick Nate Calloway was no better. Tall, loud, laughing just a beat too long when things went too far. You two lost, Nate had asked on their third day, when Layla stepped into the cafeteria line. No, she replied flatly, because this school's not a charity. Lena grabbed her sister's elbow. Not now. Layla clenched her jaw, but she followed. Later that night at the dinner table, their father asked how school was. Fine, Lena lied. It's whatever, Layla mumbled. Their mom glanced at their faces, then back to her plate. She didn't press, but she knew. She always knew. They kept their silence not out of weakness, but because it had been weaponized before. They remembered Charlotte, where a teacher once touched Lena's hair like it was part of a museum display. They remembered Atlanta, where a girl called Layla Ghetto in front of the class and no one flinched. So they kept their heads down. But even quiet has its limits. The first warning came in the form of paper. A small folded note slipped into Layla's locker on a Tuesday morning. 5 words written in all caps. Go back to where you belong. No name, no signature, just hatred, neat and confident. Layla crumpled the note and shoved it in her pocket. Didn't say a word. But that day, she didn't smile once. Then came the jokes. Connor walked past them in the hallway and dropped a banana peel at Layla's feet. Oops, he said too loudly. Don't slip. Some students laughed. Most looked away. By the end of that week, Lena had stopped sketching. Layla had stopped talking in class. And the girls, these quiet, disciplined girls who had spent years mastering their breath, their center, their power, were shrinking. Until something changed. Until it broke. Friday afternoon, gym class. They were playing dodgeball, Pinehurst's unofficial blood sport. The coach, disinterested and lazy, divided the class and tossed out the red rubber balls like bones to dogs. Connor was on the opposite team. He wasn't aiming for the win. He was aiming for Layla, and when he finally got the chance, he hurled the ball with full force, straight at her face. It hit her jaw with a smack so loud the whole gym paused. She stumbled, bit her lip, swallowed the sting. Connor grinned. Didn't see you there. The coach didn't blink. The students laughed nervously. Layla didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just picked up the ball, turned to Lena and said softly, I'm done. That night they didn't train in silence. They trained like they were remembering something ancient. Their hands moved faster. Their breath grew sharper. They didn't speak, but they understood the same thing. This wasn't about one ball or one boy. It was about not disappearing. Not this time. What happened next? That's the part that turned Pinehurst on its head. That's the part people still talk about. The moment the quiet girls reminded everyone exactly why you should never mistake stillness for submission. But for now, all you need to know is this. The next time someone tried to hurt them, they didn't step back. They stepped forward, and everything changed. Now, before you go, let's hear your thoughts. If you were in Layla's shoes after receiving that hateful locker note, what would you have done? A, report it to a teacher or a principal immediately. B, stay quiet and wait for the right moment to act. Drop A or B in the comments below, and let's talk about what it means to respond with strength. Something changed the moment that red rubber ball struck Layla Griffin's face. It wasn't just the sharp sting of rubber on skin. It was the sound, the crisp, echoing crack that reverberated through the gym like the snapping of something far more fragile than flesh. Pinehurst Prep went quiet. Not in the way that respects silence, but in the way that avoids responsibility. The coach, standing beneath a faded championship banner, didn't so much as glance in her direction. A few students gasped, but most just turned back to the game, pretending they hadn't seen it, because seeing meant deciding. And deciding meant choosing a side. Layla didn't fall. She didn't flinch. She simply straightened her spine and turned to find Connor Briggs already smirking. His hand still hovered mid-air from the throw as if he were posing for a painting. The privileged predator in his natural habitat didn't mean to. He said loud enough for the gym to hear. You move fast for someone so wild. Lena's fist tightened. She wasn't even in the game, but she felt the impact as if it had struck her own face. Her mind didn't rush to retaliation, not yet. It rushed to memory nights training with Layla in their backyard, learning how to breathe through pain, how to hold the line without folding. Sensei Marita's voice whispered from somewhere deep in her mind, "Your breath is your blade." Layla walked off the court quiet and alone. No one stopped her. No one followed, but something followed her. Something invisible, final, and sharp. That night, the Griffin's garage became more than just a training space. It became an altar. No music, no distractions, just movement and silence. Lena lit a single stick of sandalwood incense, as they always did before serious sessions. Their mother passed by once on her way to the laundry room. She paused, took one look at her daughter's faces and said nothing. She simply nodded once and kept walking. Layla's eyes didn't leave the punching pad. She struck it again and again, not with rage, but with clarity. "We can't let this go," she said finally. Lena met her gaze. "We won't." The next morning, Pinehurst looked the same, but everything felt different. The school's pristine walls and iron gates no longer offered illusion. They were barriers, containment fields, not for the dangerous, but for those society liked to keep small. Layla walked through the halls with a mark on her jaw that not even foundation could hide. And for the first time, people saw it. Some stared quickly, looking away. Others lingered with guilt. A few nodded slightly as if to say, "I saw it. I know it was wrong, but I can't be the one to say so." It was Lena who found the note. Same locker, same paper, same red ink. "You're just animals with lucky belts." No signature, of course not. Cowards. Rarely signed their work. But this time Layla didn't crumble the paper. She folded it, pocketed it, and said, "They're getting bold. They're getting scared," Lena replied. By the end of the day, they were no longer just enduring the hate. They were being targeted with precision. In between classes, someone pushed Layla into a row of lockers. Her books fell. Laughter followed. "Oops," a voice mocked behind her. "Monkeys can't carry much, can they?" She turned, fists clenched, but it wasn't Connor. It was one of his shadows, a freshman looking to earn points in the wrong system. Lena stepped between them before it escalated. Her stare alone sent the boy retreating, but it was only a matter of time. They knew it, and so did Connor. Because his power, so long upheld by fear, by tradition, by silence, was beginning to crack. The twins hadn't bowed, they hadn't begged, they hadn't broken, and that terrified him more than anything. That Friday, the Griffin sisters found something new in Lena's locker. A printed message this time, Cedar Field, 4:10 p.m. Come alone or run. There was no attempt at subtlety anymore, just a challenge. Layla read it and scoffed. "Guess they're done playing pretend." "We never were," Lena said. They didn't tell their parents. They didn't record a warning video. They didn't call the school counselor who would have told them to stay calm and trust the system. They trained. For 2 nights, they didn't just go through their usual forms, they sharpened them. Kata flowed like poetry across their garage floor. Layla's kicks cut through the air with precision. Lena's footwork glided like wind over water. They weren't fighting shadows now. They were preparing for real people, real consequences. On Saturday, Sensei Marita called them during their break. I heard he said simply, "They didn't ask how Sensei always knew." "You have every right to defend yourselves," he said. "But do not fight to win, fight to end." "We understand," Lena said. Layla nodded, sweat dripping down her brow. "We're not looking for glory." "Good," he replied, "because revenge is loud. But justice is silent until it's done." By Monday, the tension was a living thing at Pinehurst. Students whispered in bathrooms and beneath stairwells. Rumors flew like birds in a storm. They're gonna fight the Briggs crew. I heard Connors bringing older guys. Someone said Layla can knock a man out in 3 seconds. The story was evolving faster than they could track. But they let it spread. Let the fear do its work, because sometimes fear has to be redistributed. Connor wasn't subtle with his planning. By lunch, it was common knowledge that he had recruited 3 older students, Jace, Derek, and Hunter, all football, all muscle, all infamous for things that never made it to detention slips but were etched in locker room walls and whispered at parties. He gave Hunter a bike chain. "Don't hurt them too bad." He smirked. "Just make sure they know not to come back." At 4:05 p.m., Lena and Layla stepped onto Cedar Field. No crowd yet, just wind and a memory. They looked like shadows stretched by a late sun, 2 figures forged in steel, breathing evenly. Hearts calm. They wore black sneakers, black sweatpants, and hoodies that said nothing but ready. The others arrived minutes later. Connor's crew stomping across the field like they were entering a coliseum. The bike chain glinted. Jace cracked his knuckles. Derek snarled something too low to hear. 5 boys. 2 girls. Connor smiled like he'd already won. Layla smiled like she'd already buried him. And Lena. Lena didn't smile at all. She just breathed. Sensei's words echoed in her chest. "You don't fight to destroy. You fight to defend the sacred." Layla shifted beside her, whispering, "Together." Lena's response was simple, always. And they stepped forward. The bruises fade faster than the silence. By Tuesday morning, Cedar Field was empty, but Pinehurst Prep was full of glances, of whispers, of something that pulsed in the walls like static. Lena and Layla Griffin didn't walk into school that day. They moved through it like storms that had already passed, leaving a trail of cleared space and uncertain stares. No one dared speak to them directly, but everyone saw them now. That was new. They no longer sat alone at lunch, not because others joined them, but because now people left them space with purpose. Fear, respect, uncertainty. It was hard to tell where one emotion ended and the next began. Lena noticed it in the way doors opened a beat sooner when they walked toward them. Layla saw it in the way even the loudest boys dropped their voices as they passed. For the first time, the twins weren't being ignored, but they weren't being embraced either. They were being watched. That suited them just fine. It wasn't fame they'd earned at Cedar Field. It was something older, more complicated, something they never asked for and would never fully trust. But it was power, and in a place that tried to make them invisible that mattered. Connor Briggs hadn't shown up to school on Monday. Neither had Nate. But by Tuesday, they were back moving slower, quieter, limping through the day with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Their energy had shifted. Their laughter was missing. Their control had cracked. Layla caught sight of them near the east staircase between third and fourth period. Connor stood with his arms crossed, facing away from her, but she saw the tension in his shoulders. Nate whispered something, and both of them turned just enough to notice her watching them. Layla didn't blink. She didn't look away. For a moment, Connor's mask slipped. His jaw tensed. His hands twitched. He looked like a boy who had heard something in the dark and couldn't unhear it. Later that day, as Lena passed through the library, she found her own reputation tucked into the corners of other people's mouths. "That's her," someone muttered. "The one who flipped Derek like it was nothing." I heard. She caught a chain with her bare hands. Rumors, of course. Embellishments. But stories have always moved faster than truth. And sometimes stories carry more weight. Still, for Lena and Layla, It wasn't about the legend growing in their wake. It was about what came next. Because nothing truly ends with a single confrontation, especially not power. Connor was bruised. Yes, humiliated. Sure, but boys like him didn't stay silent forever. They regrouped. They schemed. And Lena knew with a clarity that made her skin cold that something was coming. He would want to reclaim what he lost. At home that night, their mother placed a warm bowl of soup in front of each daughter, kissed their foreheads, and said only, "Hold your ground." Their father, seated at the far end of the table, added quietly, "The first punch you throw is the loudest, but the quiet ones after are what reshape the world." The family ate in near silence. Afterward, Lena and Layla returned to the garage. There was no rage in their movements that night, no heat, just discipline, precision, control. They trained not for the next battle, but for something harder, the pressure that follows victory, the strange loneliness of being seen but not understood. By Thursday, something else began to bloom in the cracks, a tension of a different kind. Erica Ung, a junior who rarely spoke and never sat in the center of any room, approached Layla at her locker. "I just wanted to say," she began, voice barely above a whisper, "what you did. It meant something." Layla blinked. Erica continued, "My brother's in 6th grade. He saw the video. He started taking karate this week." Layla wasn't sure what to say, so she didn't say anything. She just nodded. A freshman named Mariah left a post-it in Lena's locker. "Thank you for reminding them we exist." By the end of the week, it was no longer just rumors trailing the twins. It was whispers of change, not formal, not organized, but real. The boys didn't speak it, but the girls, they were watching, they were learning, and most of all, they were remembering. Remembering what it looked like when someone stood up and didn't sit back down. But change brings danger too. Connor wasn't done. That much became clear when Jace Templeton, his shoulder still bandaged from the field, walked past the twins at lunch and muttered, "You think you ended something?" Layla didn't answer. Lena, calm as ever, met his eyes and said, "No, we just refuse to stay in it." That night, Layla couldn't sleep. She stood at the window of her bedroom, watching the Austin lights flicker like fireflies in a jar. "I keep thinking it's over," she said to Lena, who was curled on her bed across the room. "It's not," Lena replied, "but it's quieter now. That matters." Layla turned. "What if they come at us with something worse next time?" Lena didn't flinch. "Then we do what we always do. We breathe. We listen. We move." A few days later, Principal Keating called the Griffin twins into his office. He didn't scold them, didn't threaten suspension. He just closed the door and sat down heavily. "I've been in education 23 years," he said, "and I've seen a lot of fights, most of them pointless. Yours was different." He folded his hands. "This school has issues. You revealed them. You didn't ask to, but you did." Layla raised an eyebrow. "What are you going to do about it?" Keating gave a small smile. "What I can. And maybe what you can too." He told them about a new initiative, a student-led committee, conversations about race, about safety, about who gets heard and who gets ignored. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't sweeping reform, but it was something. Lena stood. "We're not interested in being a poster." Keating nodded. "I don't want that either." Layla hesitated. "Can we make it real, or is this just damage control?" "That's up to you," he said. As they left the office, Lena turned to Layla. "You think we should do it?" Layla didn't answer right away. "Then, if it keeps someone else from standing where we stood, maybe." By the next week, the Griffin twins had officially founded Pinehurst's first student-run self-defense and safety initiative. They called it the Griffin Club, not after their name, but after the mythical creature, half lion, half eagle, protector of treasure. because that's what they saw themselves as now, not warriors, not martyrs, guardians of something bigger than just themselves. In the weeks that followed, more students joined. Some came for strength, some came for confidence, some came because they needed to be reminded they had power at all. The sessions weren't flashy, they weren't filmed, they were quiet, intentional, rooted. And as the sound of padded fists hitting training mats echoed through the old gym storage room, a new kind of power began to hum in the bones of Pinehurst. Not the kind that bullies build, but the kind that can't be stolen, only shared. A kind that whispers, "We're still here, we're still rising, we're still not afraid, and this time, we're not alone." The wind that swept across Cedar Field that afternoon carried more than just leaves. It carried weight. The kind you feel in your chest before thunder breaks. The kind that doesn't shake the trees but shakes something deeper, like memory, like blood. Lena and Layla Griffin stood at the edge of the field, still as statues. The sun was low behind them, casting long shadows across the grass. The field was half dirt, half weeds, framed by rusted bleachers and a sagging fence that hadn't been painted in years. But today, it might as well have been a battleground, not because of who stood across from them, but because of what had led them here. They didn't flinch when the first bodies emerged from the far side. Connor Briggs came first, walking like he owned the earth beneath his feet, even if it was slipping from him. Nate followed, dragging his heels, his face split between shame and anger. Behind them came the older boys, Jace Templeton with his bulked-up chest and taped fingers, Derek Monroe cracking his neck with theatrical flair, Hunter Vale wrapping a chain loosely around his knuckles, like he was auditioning for a street fight in a movie he barely understood. 5 against 2. And yet the Griffin twins didn't look outnumbered. They looked inevitable. Connor's voice broke the tension. "First, you could have walked away." Layla stepped forward, her hoodie fluttered slightly in the breeze. "You could have let us be. I gave you a chance to shut your mouths and keep your place." Lena didn't raise her voice. "You mistook our silence for permission." Jace laughed, a low, mean sound. "Y'all sure talk big for girls standing in dirt." "We're not standing in dirt," Layla said. "We're standing where cowards come to test themselves." Connor's smirk twitched. "Then let's test something." They moved in together. It happened quickly. There were no announcements, no bell to start the round, just movement. Jace lunged toward Layla with a heavy right hook, the kind that relied on brute force and fear. But Layla had seen it in his stance before. His fist left his shoulder. She ducked low, drove her shoulder into his gut, and lifted not with muscle but with leverage. He hit the ground with a thud that sucked the air from his lungs. At the same moment, Derek charged Lena with a wild swing aimed at her head. She stepped aside smoothly, let his momentum carry him past her, then delivered a clean strike to the back of his leg. He collapsed forward, rolled once, and cursed under his breath. Hunter came next, chain swinging wide. He snarled, whipping the metal toward Layla's ribs. She caught the motion, leaned back just far enough for the chain to whistle past, then moved in fast. Her elbow landed on his shoulder. Her foot swept behind his ankle, and he was down. The chain fell from his grip, coiled like a defeated snake in the dirt. Nate hesitated. It was the smallest pause, barely a heartbeat, but Lena saw it. She locked eyes with him across the space and stepped toward him. Not with threat, but with something worse, understanding. "You don't want this," she said quietly. Nate swallowed. "I didn't sign up for Connor," shoved him forward, then "Get out of the way." But Nate didn't move. He turned around and walked off the field. Just like that. Connor was breathing harder now, not from exertion, but from disbelief. His crew, his muscle had either fallen or folded, and still the twins hadn't broken a sweat. He took a step toward them, pulling a smaller chain from his pocket. This one was brass, shiny, polished. like a weapon forged more for symbolism than damage. "You think this is over?" he spat. "No," Layla said. "We think this is the part you've been avoiding." He swung fast. Reckless years of privilege behind that punch. Years of assuming no one would ever hit back. But Lena stepped in front of her sister. She caught his wrist, mid-swing, twisted, and dropped into a low stance. His body followed his wrist down, landing hard in the dirt. He grunted, scrambling to his knees. Lena leaned down. "This is us, being merciful," she said. "Don't confuse it with weakness again." Connor looked up at her, and for the first time, something real flickered in his eyes. Not rage, not arrogance, fear, not of pain, but of being seen, truly seen, for the first time as someone not in control. The chain fell from his hand. Behind the fence line, hidden in shadows and trees, students watched. Phones had been recording since the first punch. Whispers traveled faster than fists. Dozens of eyes took in the scene, some stunned, some ashamed, some awed. The twins didn't wait for applause. They didn't speak again. They simply turned and walked across the field, hand in hand, not as victors, but as women who had reclaimed their own story. By the time they reached the edge of the field, the sun had dipped low enough to cast them in gold. Their shadows fell behind them like wings. The videos uploaded that evening didn't show glory. They didn't show cruelty. They showed precision, control, a level of calm that could only be earned through years of focus and pain and silence that had finally been given a shape. And the internet did what it always does. It chose sides. Some called them violent. Others called them heroes. But the truth lived between the pixels, in the breath before the kick, in the decision not to strike harder than necessary, in the refusal to humiliate, even when they had every reason. That night, Principal Keating sat in his office long after the building had emptied. The footage had reached his inbox. The emails had started, some angry, some grateful, some confused. He watched the fight twice. Then he watched again, frame by frame. He didn't see girls looking for trouble. He saw students who had asked the system to listen and were answered with silence. He saw discipline in every strike. He saw restraint where others might have seen revenge. He saw something the school had never prepared for students who didn't need to be protected because they'd learned to protect themselves. The next morning, he called Lena and Layla into his office. They sat without slouching, without fidgeting, still breathing slow and even, like they'd just come from morning training. "I won't suspend you," he said. "There's too much I need to learn from what you've shown. We didn't do it for attention," Lena said. "I know," he replied. "You did it because no one else would." Layla leaned forward. "So now what?" He sighed. "Now, we figure out how to rebuild the foundation you just shook." They left his office the same way they'd entered Cedar Field together, but this time the hallway didn't echo with cruelty or laughter. It echoed with something quieter, something sharper: recognition, respect, possibility. By the end of the week, a dozen students had emailed the administration asking for more conversations on equity. Others requested martial arts programming. Some simply asked if they could talk to the Griffins. The girls agreed, but not as mentors, as mirrors. They didn't want to become legends. They wanted to become examples of what happens when courage stops waiting for permission. The chain Connor used now sat locked away in the bottom of the principal's desk drawer, silent, harmless, a relic of something broken and buried. But Lena and Layla didn't need trophies. They carried their legacy in their posture, their calm, their unshakable presence. They had not just survived Pinehurst, they had changed it. And for the first time in a long time, the halls didn't belong to the loudest voice or the tallest boy. They belonged to anyone willing to stand, breathe, and refuse to back down. The week after Cedar Field was strangely quiet, not the suffocating silence the Griffin twins had met on their first day at Pinehurst Prep, not the silence that came from being ignored. This silence held something else: acknowledgement, hesitation, awe. It was the kind of hush that follows a storm when everyone realizes the world hasn't ended. But nothing is quite the same. Lena and Layla Griffin stepped into the front gates that Monday morning, not with defiance, but with the quiet dignity of girls who had stopped asking for space and started creating their own. No one blocked their way, no one whispered when they passed, and the few who dared to meet their eyes didn't hold challenge in their gaze, but apology, reverence. In the main hallway, posters promoting the upcoming winter formal hung crooked. The morning announcements buzzed through the intercom with their usual static. But the ordinary felt different now, as if the school's foundation had tilted slightly and the entire campus was still finding its balance. Connor. Briggs wasn't in first period, neither was Nate Calloway. When Lena later saw them in the hallway, Connor with a brace on his wrist, Nate with his head down, they moved like ghosts. The center of power had shifted. Their empire had collapsed, not with fireworks, but with the quiet authority of two girls who refused to be erased. What the Griffins didn't expect, however, was what would grow in the aftermath. During lunch, a girl named Erica Ng approached their table. She held her tray with two hands, nervously hovering, not quite sure whether she was interrupting. "Hey," she said softly, "do you mind if I sit?" Layla looked up and smiled, not a big performative grin, but something open. "Human, yeah. Sure." Erica sat down, visibly relieved. "I've been wanting to say something since last week, but I didn't know how." "You're saying it now," Lena said. "That's enough." Erica swallowed. "What you two did, it made some of us feel seen, like we weren't crazy for feeling small all the time." Layla nodded. "We know that feeling." A few minutes later, a freshman girl named Mariah passed by and gave a silent thumbs up. That same evening, a flurry of anonymous notes appeared on the girls' lockers. "Thank you. You made it easier to breathe. We matter more because of you." Lena read each one slowly. Then she folded them and tucked them carefully into the inside pocket of her bag, not as trophies but as reminders. Something was beginning, something real. That Friday, Principal Keating called them into his office again. This time he didn't look worn or conflicted. He looked resolved. "I've been in meetings all week," he said, "with the district, with parents, with lawyers. You stirred a lot of dust." "We didn't mean to," Lena replied. "You meant to stop hiding," he corrected, "and you did. Now we all have to catch up." He leaned forward. "I'm proposing a new initiative, student-led, focused on safety, identity voice. I want it to be permanent, not performative." Layla tilted her head. "You want us to be the face of it?" "No," he said. "I want you to help build it, from the inside." The sisters exchanged a look. "We'll help," Lena said, "if we can do it our way." Keating nodded. "That's the only way it works." By the next month, the Griffin Initiative launched with more than 30 students signing up. Not all of them were victims of bullying. Some were simply tired of pretending. Some wanted to understand. Some just wanted to listen. The meetings didn't look like protests or assemblies. They looked like circles of students in folding chairs, learning to name the things they'd been taught to ignore. Meanwhile, the twins weren't done. They had always trained in private under the hum of fluorescent garage lights and the gentle discipline of Sensei Morita. But now, their training became something else, a seed to share. With permission from the school board, they founded the Griffin Club, a weekly self-defense and mindfulness program open to all students, especially girls, who had been made to feel vulnerable in the very halls they walked every day. The first session brought 5 girls. The second 12. By spring, they were renting space in the gym and turning people away due to capacity. Layla taught movement. Lena taught breathing. They never once used the word violence. Instead, they spoke of boundaries, of presence, of power that didn't need to shout. Your strength isn't loud, Layla would say. It doesn't have to be seen to be real. In time, their mother helped them design a small website. Their father quietly registered the nonprofit. Sensei Marita visited during a session and watched silently from the corner, arms crossed and eyes misty. This, he said afterward, is the real kata. Even the local news caught wind. A journalist interviewed them in the old gym storage room. "We didn't start this to become a story," Lena said during the interview. "We started because we were tired of being one," Layla added. "We're not trying to be legends. We just don't want girls like us to be warnings." The clip aired on a Tuesday night, and by Wednesday morning, Pinehurst felt like a different school. It didn't happen overnight, of course. Big systems rarely crack cleanly. There were still whispers, still old wounds, but they weren't healing in secret anymore, and that more than anything marked the shift. Then came the talent show. Neither Lena nor Layla planned to attend. They weren't performers. They weren't showy. But Erica and Mariah had other plans. "You have to do something," Erica said. "Everyone's waiting." "Waiting for what?" Layla asked. "For proof," Mariah said. "That what you did wasn't the end of something. It was the start." They talked it over. Not for long. That night, under soft stage lights and a hushed auditorium, the Griffin twins stepped barefoot onto the stage. They wore simple uniforms, black pants, gray t-shirts, no belts, no music, just breath. They bowed. And then they began. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't a demonstration. It was a story told through movement, kata woven with rhythm, form layered with memory. Each strike carried history. Each block whispered resilience. The audience didn't clap during the performance. They didn't move. They just watched. When it ended, Lena and Layla bowed again and walked off stage without speaking. The standing ovation came late, but it came. In the final weeks of the school year, something else happened, something small but undeniable. A white student named Lily stood up in English class and challenged a textbook passage that used coded language to describe neighborhoods and race. She cited data, then she cited the Griffin Initiative. A teacher known for ignoring students of color stopped mid-lecture and said, "If I've done that to any of you, I apologize. I'm learning." Connor. Briggs didn't return after winter break. Rumors circled about a transfer, a therapist, an apology he drafted but never sent. Layla read it once and deleted it. "Closure doesn't always come with bows," she said. "Sometimes it comes with distance." By the time the school year ended, Lena had been asked to speak at the final assembly. She almost declined, but Layla nudged her gently. "You have a voice. Use it." So Lena stepped up to the microphone in front of 500 students and faculty. She looked out at a sea of eyes that once refused to see her. She cleared her throat. "I came here thinking silence was safety," she began. "But silence is just another kind of invisibility." She paused. "My sister and I, we didn't come to fight. We came to exist without explanation, without fear, and when that wasn't allowed, we had to choose between vanishing or showing you who we really are." She looked down for a moment, then back up. "You've seen it now. You can't unsee it. So ask yourself, what will you do with that sight?" The room held its breath, and then slowly, someone began to clap, then another, until the room was echoing with something more than sound. Recognition. When the final bell rang on the last day of school, Lena and Layla stood by the front steps of Pinehurst. "One last time, I don't feel like we're leaving a battlefield," Layla said. "No," Lena replied. "We're leaving a blueprint." They looked out over the parking lot where freshmen snapped photos and seniors hugged goodbye, where a girl in a yellow hoodie passed a younger student a flyer for next year's Griffin Club. They walked home slowly, the sun on their backs, their shadows falling long and soft. Legacy wasn't something they chased, it was something they left behind quietly, intentionally, and without permission. And as the wind moved through the trees carrying fragments of all they'd endured, all they'd changed, all they'd built, one truth settled like dust on the ground beneath their feet. They hadn't just survived Pinehurst, they had rewritten it. At first glance, it was a simple story. Two sisters, a new school, a brutal encounter with racism, a response rooted in skill, restraint, and dignity. But if you've stayed with us this far, you know this wasn't just a story about self-defense or retaliation. This was a story about becoming seen fully, unapologetically in a world that often prefers you be silent. Lena and Layla Griffin arrived at Pinehurst Prep as outsiders, not because of who they were, but because of what the system had been conditioned to reject: their skin, their confidence, their refusal to shrink. From the moment they stepped through the school's pristine gates in Austin, Texas, they were marked not by anything they did, but by everything they represented. Disruption to the quiet hierarchy, challenge to the unspoken rules, symbols of strength where the system expected submission. What happened over the next few weeks wasn't just bullying. It was institutional indifference. It was decades of silencing, condensed into cold notes, slipped into lockers, and slurs wrapped in grins. But Lena and Layla weren't just any girls. They were trained, disciplined, grounded in purpose. Their power wasn't reactive. It was waiting, watching, holding space for the moment when silence could no longer be a shield. And when that moment came, when Connor Briggs and his crew crossed a line at Cedar Field, the Griffin twins responded, not with rage, not with recklessness, but with calibrated, principled resistance. The fight at Cedar Field wasn't just a physical confrontation. It was a reckoning, not because the twins defeated the bullies, but because they exposed them, not just as individuals, but as products of a system that had been protecting the wrong people for far too long. But what truly made this story unforgettable is what came after the fight. Because Lena and Layla didn't settle into revenge. They didn't seek popularity or applause. They took that moment and turned it into a movement. They built community. They created safe spaces. They started conversations where silence once lived. They transformed trauma into purpose. And through it all, they never lost their grace. They taught self-defense, not as combat, but as a language of belonging. They didn't just protect themselves. They empowered others to protect what mattered most: voice, dignity, and space. What happened at Pinehurst Prep became something more than a local news story. It became a blueprint, a model for how courage can exist quietly, consistently, without needing permission or validation. Let's pause and ask, what if Lena and Layla had chosen differently? What if they had crumbled under the pressure? What if they had fought out of anger instead of wisdom? What if they had retaliated recklessly or hidden away out of fear? They didn't. They stood with breath, with focus, with legacy in motion. That's the real victory. It's not that they defeated the bullies. It's that they rewrote the culture. They turned isolation into leadership. They turned pain into blueprint. They didn't just survive Pinehurst, they transformed it, and in doing so, they gave every student, regardless of race, gender background, or story, a permission slip to stop shrinking. They became a mirror, a catalyst, a movement. not because they asked for it, but because the world finally had no choice but to see them. The deeper lesson we can all carry. What Lena and Layla teach us reaches far beyond school hallways. We all at some point in our lives stand at a version of Cedar Field. It may not be a literal fight. It may be a workplace where you're overlooked, a relationship where you feel erased, a system designed without you in mind. It might be subtle, it might be loud, but you'll feel it. And when that moment comes, when you're faced with a choice to shrink or stand, remember this. Power isn't how loud you are, it's how deeply you know who you are. Lena and Layla didn't win because they fought harder. They won because they knew what they stood for before the fight even began. That kind of clarity is rare, but it can be cultivated. It starts with breath, with stillness, with training, whether in body, mind, or conviction. It starts with refusing to let other people define you before you define yourself. It means finding your foundation before the world tries to shake it, and then choosing deliberately, consciously, not just to exist, but to occupy space, to claim it, shape it, share it. How can you apply this in your life today? Ask yourself, where are you playing small because you're afraid of being noticed? Where are you silent because you've convinced yourself it's safer? Where are you waiting for permission that will never come? This story isn't just about fighting injustice, it's about choosing visibility on your own terms. In your workplace, speak with purpose, even when your voice shakes. In your relationships, set boundaries that honor your worth. In your community, create spaces where others can grow safely because you dared to show up first. You don't need to throw a punch to shift power. You need presence, conviction, and the courage to stand where others would fold, just like Lena, just like Layla. Now it's your turn to reflect. Let's bring this home with a question, something simple but real. If you were in Lena and Layla's shoes, what would you have done after the first public humiliation? A walk away, stay quiet, and try to finish the school year without confrontation. B. Train harder, stand your ground, and use discipline to defend your dignity. Drop your answer, A or B, in the comments below. There's no judgment here, just conversation. Real ones. And while you're there, share your thoughts. What part of their story hit you the hardest? Which lesson do you think the world needs most right now? Let's learn from each other. Let's inspire one another. Support the movement behind the message. If this story moved you even just a little, please consider supporting the work behind it, creating content. Like this takes hours of writing, editing, designing, and researching to deliver something meaningful, not just viral. If you believe the world needs more stories like this, more representation, more truth, more impact, then help us keep going. Hit the subscribe button so you never miss what's next. Click the bell icon to stay updated on future chapters and true stories like this one. And if you can consider donating, even a small amount makes a big difference. We're just getting started, and your support helps fuel the quality, depth, and consistency we strive for. Your voice matters. Your presence here matters. Let's keep building something that reflects all of us, not just the loudest. Thank you for being part of this. We'll see you in the next story.